I can only show you 20 minutes of edited gameplay. If this video goes longer than that, I'll have to fill in the rest with some other footage, but this is Star Wars Outlaws. Ubisoft reached out a couple of weeks ago and was kind enough to let me play a demo. Honestly, I was surprised they reached out. I would have imagined I was on the blacklist, but I guess not. I didn't get paid for it, and I don't work for Ubisoft in any way. I'm under no obligation to say anything nice about this game. All the opinions you're going to hear in this video are my own. In fact, I'm not even obligated to make this video, but we're 2 weeks out from release, and I wanted to offer a balanced perspective from someone who's actually played it. I was not among those influencers and creators who got to go to California to play this game. My event was remote, so I got to do it from the comfort of my own bedroom. I sat in a Discord call with different representatives from Ubisoft for a little over 4 hours, got to play the game on my own PC, didn't have to wear pants.
So uncivilized.
Star Wars Outlaws, from what I played, is a really casual, really easy to play adventure game. I'm pretty sure the demo that they gave us was on Journo mode because all of the enemies were insanely easy. They went down in a couple of shots, and if it took more than a few, they all got staggered when you shot them anyway, so it's not like they could fire back. The AI was really dumb. They could barely find you, even in the middle of a gunfight, and the difficulty only really scaled up when you got surrounded and they all swarmed you at the same time. That's when things got kind of hectic. Besides that, most of the time the gameplay was really casual and chill. And if I'm going to be completely honest, way too slow for my personal tastes. I could sum up my 3-hour and 45-minute gameplay session in 2 words: boredom and frustration. To be completely fair, some of it wasn't the game's fault. I mentioned my event was a remote preview, so I had some consistent lag and ping pretty much the entire time, at least 30 milliseconds of ping, sometimes more. The input delay was real, so it made gameplay difficult. I also only had 3 hours and 45 minutes to play the game. I got just a tiny sneak peek at the very tippy top of the iceberg. I think if you want to get the most out of Star Wars Outlaws, you need 2 things. As much time as humanly possible to just get lost in this game and see everything that it has to offer, because I will give it that it has a lot of content. The second thing you need is you've got to enjoy stealth mechanics. I think if you like stealth mechanics in games, you'll have a good time with Star Wars Outlaws. If you don't like stealthing, you're probably not going to get much out of this because about, I'd say 80 to 90% of what I played in the demo was stealth. Which, if you're into that, cool. I prefer my stealth sprinkled in every now and again. I wasn't a big fan of how it took up the vast majority of the gameplay time. It was clunky and kind of a slog, and it really added to that slow pace that the game has overall. It's one of the reasons I say that you need as much time as possible to really get the most out of this game because it's just that slow. Most of the missions have required stealthing, which forces you to crouch down and just adds to the mission time, even more if you get caught and have to start over from the beginning. There's sections of literal forced walking, like every time I went into McCall's gambling parlor and I couldn't sprint. Why can I not sprint? I was freaking out that I could not run. That was ridiculous. This game really wants you to stop and smell the roses. A lot of the enemies are bullet sponges, and they usually come in groups of at least 3 or 4, so it's not like the fights are super quick either. And then consider that all of the possible missions in this game, which there are many, probably has those sections where you have to stealth and all the bullet sponge enemies. I'm just trying to illustrate the point that the entire pace of the game is very, very slow, and you need time to enjoy it. You can't really get a whole lot out of a 1 or 2 hour play session. You really got to sit down for 5, 6, 7, 8 hours to really get as much out of it as you can. I played for 3 hours and 45 minutes, felt like I saw virtually nothing of the game, so I'll put it to you that way. Which kind of leads into a pretty big positive of the game, and that's that there's a lot of content. There's a lot of quests and side quests that you can do, and each one can lead into different opportunities. I stuck with the story missions pretty much the entire time I was playing, but I did make a note of how many side quests I saw, because there was a lot. I should have gone off the beaten path and explored a little bit more, because I really did have a good time just walking around the worlds and exploring them and picking up hidden items. It scratched a looter itch that I didn't know I had, and I found myself appreciating the environments and the cities. It might seem like a small detail to some, but one thing I really appreciated was the crowd density. It made the cities and the towns feel authentic and lived in. They were populated. There was a bunch of battalions of stormtroopers walking around. There was the everyday citizens just going about their business, and you have to walk through and maneuver through all of them, and it felt real. It was a nice touch. Most games would have 2 or 3 NPCs sprinkled in here and there, if that. And I guess while we're talking about the things that I liked, I had a surprising amount of fun with the combat. And it's weird because the fights aren't exactly like fights, as you would expect. It's more like football. It's more like a game plan you come up with to take out your targets, and then you execute that game plan. Sometimes it works as planned, sometimes you have to improvise, but I found myself smiling at some of the things you could do. This sequence right here was one of my favorite ones in my entire playtime. It's a 3 versus 1, and I have to come up with a game plan here. The first thing I do is I send Nix out to take something off this first guard. He brings me a grenade. I throw that grenade over to this guard on the left, blow him up, shoot the guy that I got the grenade from. Now it's a 1 versus 1. Send Nix out to attack him while I can move up and finish it with a melee. It was just 3 guys. It doesn't look that impressive, but trust me, there was a visceral satisfaction in that. 3 unique kills in the span of a couple of seconds based off of a game plan I came up with on the spot. And it worked! That's chef's kiss. That's awesome. If we're talking about a game that's supposed to simulate the smuggler and scoundrel lifestyle, that's it. That's it right there. You come up with improvised game plans, your pet fetches you a new weapon or a grenade that's gonna turn the tide of the fight. It might not always work, but at least you tried it, and is that not the epitome of Han Solo? Now you could be saying, why didn't you just shoot them? I guess I could have, but again, this was on journo mode, so it would have been boring. Plus, I wanted to get a sense of what the combat is actually supposed to be like. You're supposed to use Nix, you're supposed to steal weapons and grenades and use them to your advantage. The enemies might be bullet sponges, but K is not. It takes just a couple of shots before you're done, so at the very least you have to use cover. Nix is gonna be your MVP in combat, and really in most situations, especially stealth, because a lot of what you can get away with comes down to how you choose to use him. Nix basically is the substitute for the Force in this game, so if you think of him like that, you can sort of imagine the things that you can do. You can kind of see him fetching items as the same thing as a Force pull, or him hitting buttons or distracting a stormtrooper as a kind of mind trick. For all intents and purposes, Nix is the Force. Vehicle gameplay, I did not like in this game. The speeder was a nightmare. I absolutely hated piloting that thing. The controls might be better on console, but I thought it was terrible on mouse and keys. Mouse and keys plus ping was not a good combination, so vehicle gameplay I did not have a good time with. The Trailblazer was a little bit better than the speeder. That gameplay honestly reminded me of the flying mechanics in Battlefront 2, where you have the reticle that's going to show you where your shots are going to go, and there was a pretty strong aim assist, even with mouse and keys. I wasn't too impressed with the vehicle controls, but I was absolutely impressed with the game's scale. This is an open world game. It's pretty big, and the distances that you have to travel, both on speeder and in the Trailblazer, are pretty far. The speeder's 100% necessary. There's no way you could finish this game in a reasonable amount of time just by walking. And the space between the planets was pretty expansive. I think the next level that this game could have gone to was to be an open universe. Something close to No Man's Sky, where there's seamless ground to space to ground again. Unfortunately, that's not here in Outlaws. All of the takeoff sequences and the landing sequences are the loading screen just being masked by a cutscene. Something that really took me out of the game, and I've been seeing other people say that it's taking them out of it too, is Kay Vess's Fists of Steel. Her left hook puts Alex Pereira's to shame. Seeing this petite woman who's probably 120 pounds soaking wet knock out fully grown men wearing plastoid helmets with her bare hands. Ridiculous. Give this lady a baton. At least in Battlefront 2 campaign, Iden Versio had a baton. You crack somebody upside the head, even wearing a helmet with one of those, they'll go night-night. Jyn Erso from Rogue One, another perfect example, case in point. I'm just saying, Kay's Fists of Fury are a little bit immersion breaking. It's not the end of the world. It's a really small detail compared to everything else, but it's funny. It's just really funny every time I see it. I should have spent some time going over the controls and the settings. I'm sure there's a way to change this in the settings itself. During my playtime, there was no automatic actions, I noticed. Everything that I did, I had to do manually, whether it was grabbing a ladder, picking up an item in the world, vaulting over something. You have to initiate everything, which is neat in a sense because it gives you complete agency over what happens, but it also gets kind of annoying after a while when you have to juggle so many actions at once. I'm sure there's a setting that you can toggle on and off to at least automatically pick up items in the world, so that should take some of the burden off. Occasionally in this game, you'll encounter some mini-games that you have to get past. They're more like checkpoints. Once you complete the minigame, you can progress in the story. There's only two that I saw. There's a timing minigame and there's the logic puzzle. The timing game is really easy. You just have to match up the inputs with the blinking light and you can pass it. Even having to compensate for the ping wasn't bad. The logic game takes a little bit more brain power, and unlike the timing one, you can actually fail this, so it could take a couple of tries. It's a guess and check puzzle. You get a certain number of tries to find the right symbols and put them in the right order. These were the only two that I saw during my playtime, but I'm sure there's going to be others the further we progress in the game. The last big thing that I really want to talk about is the reputation system. And even though I'm free to speak my mind on this game, there are certain things in the footage that I'm not allowed to show you, and the reputation menu is one of them, unfortunately. It's one of the cooler looking screens in the game, too. In fact, the user interface in this game is really nice. I will give it that whoever designed the UI did a great job. The reputation system is, I would say, the heart and soul of the game, because the direction that the game goes really depends on which syndicates that you want to be friends with and which ones you choose to make enemies out of. Every syndicate has a milestone reward as you boost your reputation with them, so it could be worth getting close to one of the syndicates early on as opposed to another one, just depending on what the milestone item is. There's a couple of these rewards per syndicate, but when your reputation goes up with one of the gangs, it'll go down with another. It's a bit of a balancing act, and the devs did say that it is possible to have maxed out reputation with all of the gangs, but that's more of a late game status that you're probably not going to get to in a normal playthrough. I think the reputation system adds a lot of replay value to this game. The choose your own adventure mechanics work well here, and I like being given the option of which syndicate gets my help. All in all, based on my almost 4 hours of total playtime in this game, I would rate Star Wars Outlaws a solid 6.5 out of 10. It's a moderately okay game. It's not bad. I don't think it's a bad game, but it's far from perfect by any means. And I will reiterate, I think the best way to play is when you have a lot of free time on your hands to just get lost in it. It just lacks that wow factor for me. There's nothing that makes me go, ooh, ah, I have to play this, you know? Besides the slow gameplay and the lackluster vehicle controls, there was just too many minor things that took me out of it. Things like Kay's Fists of Steel, the really clunky stealth mechanics, which, to be fair, was probably a combination of a skill issue and the ping, so I would have to play this game again on my PS5 to really get a feel for the stealth, but what I experienced was a clunky mess. The game is a little bit clunky in general, but I've noticed that I tend to feel that way about most games that I play for the first time. Once I settle into it, it gets a lot less clunky, so it's probably just not being used to it. So I'll sort of run down the things that I liked and the things that I didn't like. The positives: planning of a combat sequence mid-fight and having it pay off was wonderful. Chef's kiss. Outstanding. I loved that. I think there's a lot of replay value here in this game because of the reputation system. You can have very different playthroughs based on the choices you make, and you can intentionally make different choices every single playthrough just to shake it up. The open world is massive. It feels lived in. It feels populated. There's lots of people around you. Crowd density was very impressive. That was well done. The locations are highly detailed. There is a reason that the trailers emphasize looking around at the terrain. Even though nobody's actually going to play like that, the game is gorgeous looking and time was put into it. Nyx is probably the best thing about this game. He makes needing the Force irrelevant. He'll fetch you weapons and grenades. He distracts and attacks enemies. Nyx is the MVP. And just exploring the world and collecting items was surprisingly satisfying. I could actually just walk around and find hidden items for hours. Like I said, it satisfied a looting itch that I didn't know I had. And there is a lot of content in this game, so there's a lot to find. Things I didn't like about Outlaws: overall, the game's pace is just way too slow for my liking. This just was not it for me. The missions are way too time-consuming. They're held up by sections of forced walking and just an overall slow pace with the stealth. It dragged on too much. It was really good at getting me ready for sleepy time. The enemy AI was very dumb. Explosions didn't alert them, and sometimes being in plain sight of them won't even alert them. They're even deaf to blasters at times. And even when you're in the middle of a gunfight already, it's not like they try to chase you or try to get a better angle at you. If they're behind cover, they'll just try to shoot through the cover. It's ridiculous. I'd like to imagine Outlaws has difficulty levels, and with higher difficulty, this won't be an issue. Because again, I'm 99% sure this was on easy mode. At least I hope this was easy mode, because if not, oh my god. Vehicle controls were terrible on mouse and keys. They might run better on controller, but the mouse and keys plus the lag was really, really bad. I did not enjoy vehicle gameplay at all. Especially the speeder, that was an absolute nightmare. Trailblazer, not so bad. But yeah, vehicle controls were one of the low points for me. I've brought it up a couple of times, but it's on my list. Stealth, once again, felt really clunky, and it's a shame that it took up most of this demo's playtime. Again, though, to be fair, it's probably just a skill issue. I kept running into cameras and guards that I couldn't see, but getting caught like that over and over again really adds to the already slow pace of the game, so it got frustrating quickly. Even more so when you consider this next point, every time I got caught, it reset my item pickups. Maybe this is a standard across all stealth games. I don't play a lot of them, so if you're familiar with the genre, you can let me know in the comments. But having to go back and pick up all the items over again every time I got caught was ridiculous. I keep bringing up the slow pace of the game, but it's as if every single element is designed for you to go as slow as humanly possible. Now I have to go back and pick up the item I already picked up? What is this? Anytime I had to retry a mission a couple of times, I just stopped picking up the items because I got tired of it. I'm like, I'm not going to walk over there and pick up this random item that I'm probably not even going to get to use during this demo. I've wasted enough time on this mission as it is. Just let me progress. Yeah, I'm ranting at this point. It got ridiculous. I was tearing out the hair that I don't have. Moving on to bullet sponges. I get why they did it. I guess I just disagree with it. Getting into a straight-up gunfight does not feel fun. The game really wants you to use everything that you've got. Cover, explosive barrels, nicks, stealth, gadgets, and grenades. Which, on paper, I think is cool. I don't see anything wrong with that necessarily. The gun itself is just not fun to use. It's really weak, it doesn't hit hard. Being able to change modules is a cool idea, but I feel like swapping the modules takes way too long, and it's just not fun to use. I really have no better way to describe it other than it's not fun. I wish I could say the melee combat was better, but we've already talked about that. I really hope the devs give Kay a baton or some other kind of melee weapon. Hell, I'll be happy with a sword. Her knocking out these helmeted stormtroopers really reminds me of the Kenobi show, and it cracks me up. Besides that, I guess this next point isn't necessarily a criticism of the game as much as it was the demo itself. I didn't really get a good sense of Kay as a character. She seems very generic and very replaceable. Like, this game could have starred Lando, or it could have starred Hondo Ohnaka, or even Han Solo himself, and I think it could have been exactly the same. Virtually nothing would have changed. I know we've got the Solo movie, but if you wanted to take Solo 2 as a concept, you could have made that this game. We could have explored Han Solo's early days in the criminal underworld. I feel like that would have made for a really cool game. And it gives it a lot of brand recognition too. Everybody knows Han Solo. I'm not saying Kay is a bad character, I'm just saying I know virtually nothing about her. And I guess I'm also saying if Han Solo was the main character, this game would probably do a lot better. In conclusion, I'm calling Outlaws mid. And I know that sounds bad. Internet circles will use mid in a negative way, but I mean that as literally as possible. It's not terrible and it's not great. It is a very middle of the road game. I think it has potential. However, a trend I'm noticing with Star Wars in recent years is unrealized potential. A lot of the projects have had the capacity to be really, really good, but they usually just fall flat. It's a lot of good ideas that are poorly executed, and I'm really hoping that Outlaws does not suffer from this. It's already got a lot going against it with that atrocious pricing model that Ubisoft's got set up. $130 for the best edition is kind of ridiculous, and they're really trying to incentivize it with the season pass. I guess post-game content is cool, but if you're paying for it on top of a fully priced game already, that's just too much money. Let's not forget that they're paywalling Day 1 DLC too, so there's that. So with all this in mind, should you, my loyal viewers, pre-order Star Wars Outlaws? Well, I'm not going to tell you whether you should or should not. That is at your discretion. If you think the game looks fun, and again, especially if you like stealth games, you might want to consider buying it. If you're unimpressed and you don't think it looks fun, then don't buy it. I'm not going to try to convince you. I feel obligated to get it so that I can make content on the channel, so I definitely will be picking it up. Probably won't be putting in my pre-order, but I think I'll get it day 1. But with that, we are just about at the 20-minute mark. Thank you guys for watching my video. If you liked the commentary, give the video a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down. Let me know in the comments if you're going to pick up Outlaws or not, and just let me know what you think about this game. Let's have a conversation. I'm looking forward to chatting with you guys, and I will see you all in the next video. Take care. Peace.